This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
UN agency warns of serious flooding that could cause more deaths and destruction in Mozambique. The Interior Minister of Libya's Government of National Accord says the international community should help stop the assault on Tripoli. And Sri Lanka is warning that the Islamist militants behind Easter Sunday's suicide bombings could be planning more terror attacks. Hello and welcome to CGTN. This is Africa Live and I'm Karen Roberts in Nairobi. Also coming up in the programme, we continue to focus on the huge potential of the Belt and Road Initiative to spur Africa's development, and how golf courses in South Africa are optimising their use of water. We begin with our continuing coverage of the latest devastating tropical storm to hit parts of southern Africa. The United Nations will grant Mozambique and the Comoros Islands $13 million in emergency funds after the second cyclone in a month slammed into the region. Cyclone Kenneth has so far killed 5 people, but rescuers are concerned about the safety of thousands of families cut off after rivers burst their banks outside Pemba, the capital of Cabo Delgado province. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has more.
These fields on the outskirts of Pemba used to be lush and green. Now they are brown and filled with flood water. This is the second disaster unfolding in Mozambique in the wake of Cyclone Kenneth. Urubai Banu lives in Pemba. She and her children were woken up by heavy rain on Sunday morning.
It was in the morning, at dawn. First some workers knocked at the door. It was around 6 o'clock, and as soon as we got out of bed, the water had already reached our knees. We tried to wait and we tried to evacuate some water, but things got worse. We're going to try to buy new clothes for my daughters. The younger ones are less than 2 years old, and everything is wet and floating in the house.
With more torrential rain forecast for the days ahead, at least 160,000 people are at risk from raging flood waters.
It's awful. Every year we suffer. Since 2013, now we're in 2019. We've always been suffering. Yes, every year there's been no improvement. We had no improvement. This one is the same as in 2013.
This is the first time in recorded history that the southern African nation has been hit by 2 cyclones in one season. A number of UN agencies have deployed response teams in Pemba. For many residents like Banu, they have to salvage the little they have and try to rebuild after this storm. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Well, CGTN's Robert Nagila now joins me in the studio. He was recently in Mozambique following the developments of the first cyclone, Idai. 2 deadly cyclones in Mozambique in just 1 month. What's the impact on the ground, and how difficult is it for all those people affected by this?
Well, Karen, the impact on the people, on the economy, is huge. Remember, just before the first cyclone, Idai, hit Mozambique, they were already reeling from floods after heavy rainfall over a number of weeks. So this has just gone on to devastate the country even further. You're talking about people's livelihoods lost, homes destroyed, infrastructure destroyed. You're talking about an economy that is now on its knees, basically. So the impact has been huge. And at this particular moment, with this second cyclone hitting over the weekend, they are yet to fully comprehend the situation on the ground, basically due to access.
So they were just trying to get back on their feet. Another one comes along. How are the aid agencies responding to this latest Cyclone Kenneth, and what challenges are the agencies experiencing now?
Well, from what we saw in Beira, the aid effort is huge. They basically set up the headquarters at the airport in Beira. It's led by the United Nations, but the overall control of this aid effort is the government. Now, they seemed to have the situation in Beira under control, but it was within central Mozambique that was the main problem, mainly due to access, because of the floods that were there before, and then the subsequent heavy rainfall, floods, and Cyclone Kenneth as well. It was really difficult for them to gain access to certain areas. By the time we were leaving, this was about almost a month after Cyclone Kenneth, they had yet to gain access to certain areas because the infrastructure had been destroyed already. And I suspect that's the same problem with Pemba as well. As we speak, they're still trying to assess the situation on the ground because access is still a huge, huge problem.
Well, let's talk a bit more about the international community. Given the magnitude of the floods there, do you think they should be doing more?
Well, to be honest, I think they're doing as much as they can at this particular moment. While we were there were hundreds of different agencies from the European Union, ICRC, the Red Cross, you had the United Nations, UNICEF, various other agencies within the United Nations. So you had all these different aid agencies working together with the government. So I suspect in terms of having boots on the ground, they've got enough people there. What they need at this particular moment is going to be more funds, because the floods have destroyed crops. So there's a looming famine as well. So apart from just cholera, malaria, there's a looming famine. What was supposed to have fed the entire population is more or less gone. That was in central Mozambique. I suspect in the coming days, as the floods recede, we're going to start hearing the same situation in Pemba as well and the underlying regions. So it's a huge, huge problem. I believe the international community and agencies are doing as much as they can. But in terms of Pemba, they have to wait until the floods actually recede before they can actually move in to assess the situation and then get the required humanitarian assistance to those who need it the most.
Well, you talk about Pemba and the conditions at the moment. The forecast is for Cyclone Kenneth to dump twice as much rainfall as Idai, so it's twice as bad. What plans specifically are in place to deal with that?
Well, what we do know, as soon as the government got wind of Cyclone Kenneth, what they did is they began evacuating people in low-lying areas up to much higher areas. However, much of Mozambique is basically flat. So that's one of the reasons why we're seeing the entire area being flooded so quickly. And of course, the heavy rains are not helping. We're talking about an entire rainfall for the entire year, raining in 2 days. That just shows you the gravity of what they're dealing with on the ground at this particular moment. So it's not going to be easy. They still have a long way to go. We've had from the World Bank saying that they will need at least $2.2 or $2.5 billion this year alone to try and prop up the economy and to help those in need. We've had the United Nations saying they've given out $13.5 million in emergency assistance over the last couple of days, but a lot more money and humanitarian assistance is going to be needed. So I suspect very quickly, Karen, once the floods aside, we're going to see a base set up at the airport, international airport at Pemba, and we're going to start seeing relief operations from there to the hinter areas as we saw in Beira as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in and describing this incredibly dreadful situation in Mozambique. Thank you. Moving on to other news now. In North Africa, the Interior Minister of Libya's internationally recognised Government of National Accord has called on the international community to put pressure on Khalifa Haftar to stop the attack on Tripoli. He said the number of deaths, casualties and refugees will increase if the war does not stop as soon as possible. CGTN's Adnan Shouachi has more.
Libyan Interior Minister Fathi Bashagha held a press conference in Tunis. He described the security situation as alarming and critical in Libya with the advance of the forces of Khalifa Haftar, the leader of the military assault.
Haftar and his forces have bombed us. Missiles are still targeting Tripoli, even at night. We condemn the silence of the international community. We will defend the capital and the rights of Libyans.
Bashagha also warned against the spread of the conflict to North Africa and the Maghreb region.
The crisis is not limited to Libya. North Africa and the Arab Maghreb are under attack. Haftar's project is not just limited to controlling Libya. Mr. Haftar is bloodthirsty. He wants to impose dictatorship onto Libyans and to control the whole region.
According to the Libyan official in the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, over 34,000 Libyans have been displaced in the latest fighting in Tripoli and the surrounding areas. Thousands of Libyan families have fled to Tunisia.
If Libyan stakeholders do not reach an agreement, the humanitarian situation will deteriorate and the number of victims will increase. The international community must intervene and convince all armed groups to sit at the negotiating table.
Libyan Interior Minister praised the role played by Tunisia and Algeria in ending his country's conflict. Bashar said Tunis and Algiers have remained neutral and rejected any military action in Libya.
Tunisian Foreign Minister Ahmed Jinawi emphasized the need to immediately end the armed clashes in Libya and to allow the resumption of the political process under the umbrella of the United Nations. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
Over to Zimbabwe now, where Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has added his voice to calls for the removal of sanctions on Zimbabwe. He's also urging African states to work together to counter punitive policies by the West. Museveni was on a two-day visit to the southern African nation. CGTN's Farai Mwakatuya has more.
President Yoweri Museveni is the latest African leader to condemn the punitive embargoes imposed by the US, which have stifled Zimbabwe's economic recovery and which are blamed for adversely impacting ordinary citizens.
So why do you put sanctions? If somebody is wrong, leave him. He will fail by his own mistakes. Why do you have to put sanctions? If you know you are right, and somebody is wrong. However, it is also the fault of Africa because we don't work together very closely. Because if we are working closely, if somebody puts sanctions on one of us, we will put counter sanctions on him, on the other one also.
Museveni was speaking while officially opening the Zimbabwe International Trade Fair in the country's second city, Bulawayo. He and Zimbabwean counterpart Emmerson Mnangagwa agreed to scale up trade and economic relations between their two nations.
You have got all the rare minerals which are very important, especially for military industries. I would want us to work together so that we develop this big potential of Zimbabwe.
Since the resignation of former President Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe has sought to attract foreign investment and step up ties with regional nations as it desperately seeks to revive an economy emerging from 2 decades in the doldrums. Farai Mwakatuya, CGTN, Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
Time for us to take a short break now. Coming up, Sri Lanka is warning that the Islamist militants behind Easter Sunday's suicide bombings could be planning more terror attacks. And how African women are creating spaces to excel despite difficult circumstances and gender-based obstacles.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Economic data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
I'm reporting from Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Moving on to some international news now, and Sri Lanka has warned that the Islamist militants behind Easter Sunday's suicide bombings are planning imminent attacks and could be dressed in military uniform. Security sources say the militants targeted 5 locations on either Sunday or Monday. There have been no fresh attacks so far and security has been ramped up. President Maithripala Sirisena has appointed a new police chief, but sources say the head of police during the attacks is refusing the request to step down. Meanwhile, the government has announced an emergency law banning face coverings. Churches across the country suspended Sunday Mass due to security concerns. CGTN's Ravinder Bawa reports now from Colombo.
It's a contradiction to kill someone in the name of God.
It is a special sermon being televised across the island nation. Hallelujah. As Catholic churches lock their doors to the public for security reasons, the Archbishop of Colombo is holding a Mass. At exactly 8:45 a.m., a special Mass is being held outside the St. Anthony's Church to remember the dead. Many join in to sing hymns while the hands on the clock tower remain stuck in time.
We are saddened because we didn't know why this country was selected for this and why a Catholic Church, because we are having very excellent relations with the Muslim community. So we were surprised that we were picked up and our people were attacked.
To maintain peace among communities, messages like these are being displayed in many places in Colombo. On the one hand, the government is taking help of the religious leaders of various communities to maintain peace and harmony, and on the other hand, they have scaled up search operations by deploying more than 10,000 security personnel to hunt down the perpetrators. In a major breakthrough, the driver of the mastermind of explosions has been arrested. 2 wanted suspects have also been taken into custody. In various raids, police made a major recovery of arms and other materials.
CID officers recovered around 30 million worth of 3 blue sapphire stones and more than 10 million worth of foreign and local currencies and around 1.5 million worth of jewelries.
The security agencies also raided the headquarters of Islamist group National Tawheed Jamaat, believed to have carried out the attacks. Ravinder Bawa, CGTN, Colombo.
The second Somali Health Fair was recently held in the Somali capital, Mogadishu. The 2-day event was an opportunity to improve health worker capacity and to encourage community awareness campaigns. Over 30 hospitals and 15 health equipment and pharmaceutical companies have been represented. Somalia's healthcare system, which collapsed after the fall of Siad Barre's government in 1991, is now dominated by private sector players. Well, according to a UNICEF report, the country's under 5 and maternal mortality rate is among the highest in the world. 1 out of 7 children die before the age of 5, while 1 in 12 women die from pregnancy-related causes. Let's now hear from some officials on how the exhibition is a step towards rebuilding the country's health sector.
I want to congratulate the doctors who've tirelessly worked towards the realization of this fair. They belong to both the private and public sector. They took part in the exhibition and their health equipment is advanced. I want to welcome you all.
I want to say that all of you know what the situation in Somalia has been like for the past 30 years. You all know the practices and problems going on in this country. I won't go into it because most of you have lived here. This fair will provide us with an opportunity to talk about what's in store for us. What is the status of our healthcare today and where are we going? This is a big industry and the whole world is competing. So what can we do to become the best?
To Ethiopia now, and an interview with a young man who came up with the African Union flag design. Yadisa Bojia's creation has helped unite Africa and is currently being used by all 55 member states of the African Union. Born in Ethiopia and based in Seattle in the United States, Yadisa Bojia spoke to CGTN's Giram Chala about what inspired his work.
Well, the first inspiration came from the charter that the African Union released, the goals and the dreams and what they think is going to happen. But then my artistic expression added into that, and basically the design evolved through my trials and get to what it is today.
When you designed this flag, and of course according to the selection results, this is supposed to unite Africa as under the African Union. Do you see a united continent at the moment?
I see more united continent before the OAU. Now, African Union pretty much, we're right now in the presence of this great assembly, and you see people mingling around and talk about African issues decided by African leaders. And I think that accomplished itself. And then, if you really go back and see the past 10 years, there's the Agenda 2063 that they passed, the passport of African countries so they can freely move around. And there is an economical cooperation that actually achieved. So when I see the past 10 years in the scope of the flag, I say that's accomplished the dream, and we can always add on it. And so I'm very positive.
Yeah, this year they have chosen the theme refugees, returnees and internally displaced persons. As an Ethiopian-born American, a migrant yourself, what do you think Africa should do to solve the problem of refugees, returnees, and perhaps internally displaced persons?
Well, that's a very good question, because actually we have to deal with the people who are already displaced and find a way to make them back home. But to begin with, we have to look into what the cause of the displacement. And mostly this has happened because of the war and internal conflict, the political instability, and then lack of democracy, which makes people to move from their native land to another place to get peace and to get opportunities. So if Africans are really wanted to change this, the first step in my mind is to make sure that Africa is conflict-free and have opportunities and jobs for the young ones. That can be accomplished. There are examples in Africa that people can look into. Even this country, for example, there is a whole lot of different things. The economy is growing, and the world people are coming back, and that opens a job for the young ones. And then when people have enough food, enough work, they tend not to go through conflicts a lot. So for me, the immediate solution is to help those who are displaced already. But the second main thing, is to make sure that there is a stable Africa in which people can live and prosper.
In northern Nigeria, construction companies depend on the many quarries in Jos in Plateau State to source boulders and gravel. For some women in the city, manually breaking huge rocks and stones with their bare hands and with simple tools has become their only source of livelihood. CGTN's correspondent Samson Omale reports now from Jos.
This is 94-year-old Azumi Atang setting out for the day's work. She is one of several hundred women in Jos with a unique but difficult job, breaking rocks for a living. Azumi's been doing this for 40 years.
I love this job. It has helped me build my house, pay for my children's education to the university level, and I'm happy about it.
She started this business in the incident of we lost our dad. So there is nobody to support the house. And there's not anything our dad left for us to support the house. So she decided to create something like this to help the house.
Despite the hard work and energy involved, these women make $25 monthly income.
Manual rock breaking is a vigorous, exacerbating and tough process, but it has become a prevalent business in Plateau State carried out by elderly women owing to the abundance of hilly rocks in this region.
Construction companies are the main buyers of stones broken by these women who play an important role in the industry.
Government should have been able to key into that value chain that exists, because the truth of the matter is that there's a huge deposit of that, as simple as creating or constructing a quarry site in Plateau State. Some of these stones, they are not even cutting it with any mechanized equipment. They use their bare hand.
But many of these women have no alternative source of income and are determined to continue despite the occupational hazards.
Whenever I break stones, my chest starts to ache. I enjoy the fresh air when I work. Other people jog in the morning for exercise, but this is our own exercise.
Medical experts, however, are concerned that there are long-term health implications from these kind of work.
There are health implications which should be factored in. If that is not done, over a long time they could come down with these conditions, and that would affect the ability to even the quality of life to even move around.
Despite their meager income and health hazards they face, these women are determined to continue breaking stones for a living until they can find another source of generating income. Samson Omale, CGTN, Jos, Nigeria.
Meanwhile, the UK government has launched a $13 million project to discourage Nigerian women from travelling abroad in search of a better future. The project, Stamping Out Slavery, will focus on the success stories of women in Nigeria through awareness campaigns in schools, churches and markets. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam takes a look now at how a former human trafficking victim rebuilt her life.
May is a victim of human trafficking. Her full identity is being concealed for fear of reprisal by her traffickers. At 15 and out of secondary school, she was lured into traveling abroad with a promise of a better life. But her hopes quickly dashed. She was trafficked to Saudi Arabia and sold into slavery. May was sent back after her health deteriorated. She's now taking hairstyling lessons in this salon in the capital, Abuja. May considers her failed attempt to seek better life abroad a mistake.
I came back to Nigeria for a purpose, because if it's not for a purpose, I might have been dead by now. But I come back because I still have many destiny and many purpose to fulfill. That is why I'm back.
According to the Global Slavery Index, there are about 40.3 million victims of slavery worldwide. 71% of them are females. Nigeria ranks 32nd out of 167 countries with the highest number of slaves. The UK government believes an aggressive campaign to discourage Nigerian women from embarking on risky journeys to find better life abroad could significantly cut the number of women falling victims to human trafficking. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Well, continuing with the women's theme now, to Tunisia. The country is one of the most advanced in Africa and the Arab region in terms of women's rights. The government has approved a project to ensure gender equality in both the public and the private sectors.
The Ministry of Women's Affairs in Tunisia announced that the country's premier issued a circular to ensure gender equality in all governmental and functional posts.
The circular stipulates the need to propose a man and a woman for each governmental or functional posts so as to increase the presence of women in decision-making posts and in representative structures.
The minister further highlighted the importance of applying all laws guaranteeing guaranteeing gender equality, Labidi stressed that Tunisia is among the few Arab Muslim countries to make important steps in terms of equality.
The civil society components must support the government's efforts in law implementation. We can achieve Tunisia's economic and social goals, enhancing women's role.
Several measures were taken by Tunisia during the past years, such as the adoption of a law on the elimination of violence against women, the extension of the maternity leave, the amendment of the Nationality Code.
In addition, the creation of the Peers Council for equal opportunities between men and women and the guarantee of the social welfare for rural women are important achievements. Gender equality at the remuneration level and access to labour are important.
According to the Parliament Speaker, Tunisia accounts for 73 women MPs out of 217. That is 33% against a global rate of 24%. The Ministry of Women's Affairs has called for the need to draft a global strategy to ensure gender equality, which is an important vector of social and economic development. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
Chirping of birds, sounds of whispering trees, burbling of streams. When sunlight sets the forest's leaves aglow, and waterfall surges down from the mountain, we see and hear the Earth's wondrous beauty. The Earth is meant to be appreciated, and the life of its inhabitants deserves our endless exploration. Come with CGTN to listen and see, in chorus of life, to marvel at nature and life.
Well, we are going to a short break now. Don't go away. We've got all the business news coming up, including... We continue to focus on the huge potential of the Belt and Road Initiative to spur Africa's development.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live, Find your voice.
During last week's Belt and Road Forum in Beijing in China signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. The memorandum indicates both sides will work together in sectors such as infrastructure, transportation, trade and energy. Here's more from the Chinese Foreign Ministry.
This year's Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation attracted more than 6,000 representatives from over 150 countries and 92 international organizations. This is a vote of approval by the participating countries and institutions, and it shows the confidence they have in it. I want to emphasize that the Belt and Road Initiative is open, inclusive, and transparent. We welcome all like-minded countries to participate, and we can work together for shared growth with joint consultations.
Well, this year's Belt and Road Forum involved high-level discussions among 40 world leaders. The topics that were covered include development, multilateralism, globalization, and the emergence of regional schemes that can work in conjunction with the Belt and Road Initiative. Experts in Zimbabwe have welcomed this, saying that the continent can benefit from development opportunities brought forth by the initiative.
I think President Xi's speech at the second Belt and Road Forum was very relevant to the rest of the world and particularly to Africa. He spoke of innovation. We're talking about innovation a lot. He spoke of green investment. We're concerned about the environment here. He spoke of transparency and combating corruption. Those are issues we're dealing with in Africa. He spoke of free trade. 26 countries in Africa have a free trade area, which is just starting, but it will be very important to work with China on that. It will work only with good and appropriate infrastructure, and China has already begun helping African countries with infrastructure.
The United Nations Economic Commission for Africa says the Belt and Road Initiative has the potential to transform Africa into a well-connected and well-developed continent. According to the Executive Secretary of UNECA, the current infrastructure deficit of Africa of almost $100 billion can be solved through China's proposed BRI. CGTN's Kiram Chawla has more.
By far, the Belt and Road Initiative is said to be the single largest growth and development initiative the world has ever seen in the last century. 65 countries, 400 million people, and almost 40% of world's GDP is going to be positively impacted by the China-based Belt and Road Initiative. For Africa, it means even more.
Our overall infrastructure cost on the continent about $130 billion. We lack about half of that amount to meet our required infrastructure needs. And we hope that with initiatives like this, which are essentially financing vehicles as well for filling some of those gaps. And as I said, of the 65 countries that are in the Belt and Road Initiative today, many of those are on the continent. And so we hope that some of this process of, rebuilding and strengthening infrastructure, both sea infrastructure, because the Belt and Road is sea connections and land connections, can also work.
Africa every year loses about 2% of its GDP because of lack of proper infrastructure. The Executive Secretary of UN Economic Commission for Africa, Vera Songwe, says African states must work together to see the Belt and Road Initiative successful.
Yes. It's not just an infrastructure project. It's an institutions building project. It's a trade project because it's going to facilitate trade. It's a people-to-people project because it's going to connect people more. But as you begin to do these things, you need institutions that can also govern that process. And I think that it's going to be very difficult for us to go fast on these projects if we don't have clarity on what are the governing institutions around which we want the project to exist. And we want to use the Belt and Road Initiative to ensure faster a much more efficient application of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, which basically means logistics. And so what we would care about, I think, the most is how can we speed up the logistics infrastructure that we need to make the CFTA a viable agreement. That means building more rail, for example, in an efficient way, energy, as part of that initiative.
So in simple terms, the Belt and Road Initiative, if and when successfully implemented, will be a game-changer initiative to the whole of human community. For Africa, it is a guarantor of a giant leap forward, away from knee-deep poverty. Grumtara CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
In Cotonou, the largest city in Benin, China has established an economic centre to promote trade with the country and other West African countries. More on this from CGTN's Laura Walobengo.
Located in the Ghani shopping district in downtown Cotonou, the Chinese Centre for Economic and Commercial Development is the result of Sino-Beninese cooperation. Filled with shops and warehouses, this multi-purpose building connects Chinese manufacturers with businesses from Benin and other West African nations.
The Benin Chinese Economic and Commercial Development Center has several missions: to organize international fairs and exhibitions of products that we commonly call the Chinese Product Fair in Benin, to bring investors looking for representatives with samples of their products at these fairs and exhibitions, and to promote meetings between suppliers and importers from Benin or the sub-region. We also want to finance imports from China.
The center is mainly populated by Chinese businesses.
My company is here because the Benin Chinese Economic and Commercial Development Center enables Chinese companies to operate in Benin. The platform helps the Chinese to easily set up their businesses.
The center offers employment opportunities for youth in Benin and the wider region.
The center is already doing a lot in terms of reducing unemployment. There are currently about 18 employees from Benin and Togo, and only 3 or 4 Chinese employees. So you can see that the workforce is essentially local.
I started working with the Chinese in 2018. I thank them very much for what they are doing in Benin. I have 4 children, and with my salary, I can make a decent living.
The Chinese Center in Cotonou has been operational since 2008.
The Beijing International Horticultural Exhibition is now open to the public. The first wave of visitors entered this morning following a welcoming show. Visitors can see a huge collection of plants, flowers and pavilions from across the world, including more than 300 rare and endangered plant species. CGTN's Tang Bo brings us more from the site.
During the following 162-day exhibition, visitors will be able to take part in nearly 2,500 cultural activities in the park, such as float parades and world ethnic culture performances. Now, all the preparation work, including construction of the site and interior decoration for over 200 exhibitors, have been completed, including the China Pavilion, which is a landmark structure at the expo. And I want to talk a little bit more about the pavilion because of its very special design. And as you can see behind me, and that is the China Pavilion. A large part of it is under the man-made terraced fields. Such an earth-covering architectural design can help the structure preserve humidity and resist heat, and therefore reducing the energy consumed for heating or cooling.
We're going to a short break now. When we come back, how golf courses in South Africa are optimizing their use of water.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Kanata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Water conservation is fast becoming a worldwide concern, and in order to survive, South Africa's golf courses are striving to conserve this precious commodity. One such golf course is Royal Johannesburg in Kensington, which uses only rain and stored water to keep the grass green. CGTN's CS du Plessis has more.
South Africa boasts some of the most pristine golf courses in the world. Unfortunately, the priority for some of those exquisite settings is to maintain the aesthetics instead of conserve water. And that comes at an incredible cost, according to the Chief Operating Officer of the best course on the continent, Chris Bentley.
You know, your average golf course for a tournament, like a European co-sanctioned event, you'd be required to use a minimum of 2 million litres a night to get it in the condition you see today. But you know, for us, it's about keeping the turf alive and getting the best possible playing surfaces with what, you know, God gives us.
The Sunshine Tour organises major tournaments across Africa, and the organisation has taken steps to conserve water. But as the COO, Gavin Wilson, admits, not all golf courses are doing the same and are lagging behind on the conservation front.
Yeah, I think golf courses across the country could be a lot more aggressive in their strategy to conserve water. When one thinks about the amount of hospitality and catering that goes on and the showering that goes on across the country, I think, you know, alternative ideas around disposable plates, knives, forks, that kind of thing that don't require washing up could be considered. But it is something, I mean, there are a lot of golf clubs that have made important strides in conserving water, but I think we've still got a long way to go.
The City of Gold's 129-year-old golf course has made major strides in conserving water in the past decade. From water-wise taps in the change rooms, collecting and storing rain and grey water, to tapping into boreholes in the absence of summer precipitation.
In today's day and age, we have such a responsibility, specifically with water and how it's used. We're one of the few facilities in South Africa that heavily rely on what falls out the sky. You know, what falls out the sky, we store it in our infrastructure, and what falls out is what we have to use.
These pumps have been pumping water around the golf course for over 100 years, and the objective is to keep them pumping water for the next century. But the only way to do that is for the golfers and the community to buy into the idea that this is a finite resource, and if they don't conserve it, it will eventually run out. CS du Plessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
As Libya confronts a civil war, one group of artists there is proving that nothing can stamp out creativity. CGTN's Guy Henderson reports now from the eastern city of Benghazi.
Mohamed Busnaina's darbuka survived the purge. But it's the way he plays this most traditional of Libyan instruments. He's freestyling, that for many years made performances like this impossible.
The Libyan masses and harm our art and heritage.
Cultural corruption under Muammar Gaddafi's rule had serious consequences.
Trumpeting a new era in anti-American propaganda, the crowd left little doubt that Johnny B. Good is neither good nor welcome in Libya. That's it, Johnny. Go, go.
Even with the despot gone, signs of modernity were suppressed by Islamic State or subdued by civil war. Except in this once hidden basement in Benghazi, where quiet creativity persisted even in darker times.
And waiting for the boat to be ready.
Now, amid relative stability, it's beginning to resurface. Mohamed's putting music to the paintings hung on these walls. They recently put on an exhibition.
We're trying to open a door for the civil works and for artworks, and to give a space for artists to maybe try to express their feelings, and to give a space for people who are interested in art to see something different than the war.
So Dina, what do the masks here represent?
The masks is it's about like exhibition called Reflection. It's a mixed media art. I wanted to show like one concept about this exhibition, showing the different masks that we have to wear every day. Sometimes bad, sometimes good materials for like.
Dina El Galal self-trained using whatever material she could find, and believes her work has the power to heal.
Art, music, it's not a big part in their life because they have like the normal life struggle. But if we really like use art to show these things more, better than just showing normal copying paintings things, to be like something really you can deliver messages.
It seems not even the most vicious of conflicts could crush creativity. Guy Henderson, CGTN, Benghazi.
All the sports news coming up after the break, including David De Gea's howler against Chelsea leaves Manchester United's top four hopes hanging in the balance.
Africa Live. Find your voice.